From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. This is our shared ministry. It's amazing what we're able to build together, and the reality is that we, like most human beings, are generous people. Acts of care and support often come naturally to us. Gratitude emerges as we acknowledge how many people have helped us become the individuals that we are. And so it's natural to want to pass on that care with gratitude. The natural impulse to help others is part of what brings pleasure and happiness into our lives. Paul Gorman, in his book, How Can I Help?, quotes spiritual teacher Ram Dass on the impulse to volunteer. He writes, "At times, helping happens simply in the way of things. It's not something we really think about, merely the instinctive response of an open heart. Caring is a reflex. Someone slips, your arm goes out. A car is in the ditch, you join with others and push. A colleague at work has the blues, you let her know you care. It all seems natural and appropriate. You live, you help. When we join together in the Spirit, action comes more effortlessly, and everybody ends up nourished. Girding against the flood, setting up a community meeting, preparing a funeral. People seem to know their part. We sense what's called for. If we don't and feel momentarily awkward, someone comes quickly with an idea, and it's just right, and we're grateful. Needs are anticipated, and glances of appreciation among us are enough to confirm that it's all going well. We take pleasure not only in what we did, but in the way we did it. On the one hand, the effort was so natural it might seem pointless or self-conscious to make something of it. It was what it was. Yet if we stop to consider why it felt so good, we sense that some deeper process was at work. Expressing our innate generosity, we experienced our kinship, our kindness. It was us. In service, we taste unity. When we became part of this fellowship, on some level, we chose to be kin. We chose to work together, unified, to build a community that has meaning not only to us, but also to those who will come after us. There are many ways that we support one another. Martha has just kindly shared one of the ways that our UU kinship beyond this fellowship can help support other congregations. And I appreciated, Martha, that you enumerated the different kinds of ways when sometimes you're a reluctant volunteer and sometimes when you're an enthusiastic volunteer, because I think we need to be open and honest with each other about what works and what doesn't work. When we received our Chalice Lighter grant, people, as Martha said, from all over the district gave their $15 that mounted up to a lot of money. These people that we will never meet unless they visit from Cannon or Sandy Springs or somewhere, all these people gave gifts in hope and trust that we would thrive, and we have. And with gratitude, we pass on that generosity to the next congregation that has a need. In a similar way, our gifts of time to this congregation are our investment in the people who come into the sphere of this congregation and into the sphere of the outreach projects in which we participate. Our volunteer involvement is also offered with a sense of trust and hope. When we teach our children, even if we don't have children in religious education, that's a plug for a few more teachers. We are volunteering with gratitude for those who throughout our lives helped us, and because we trust that the children we teach will in their turn make the world a better place. When we help lead a service or a covenant group, we share our time and leadership because we hope that our participation will bring deeper meaning into the lives of other people and into our own lives. When we help maintain the buildings or grounds or the memorial garden, we seek to enhance the nurture and peace that people find here. I was so glad when Garrett was like, I feel peaceful when I'm here. So the energy and the feeling that we're developing here, our children can sense also. It takes all of us to grow a healthy congregation with a vision for the future. Looking out, I know that I stand in the midst of people who care deeply about our world, the earth, the state of our society, and this community. The world isn't going to change without people like us. And one thing our fellowship can do is to support one another when we continue to work, even when we feel discouraged, because we know we're working to build the beloved community, which in our heart of hearts we know we may not see in our lifetime. We know we are needed. And to quote that fount of wisdom, Dr. Seuss, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, things are not going to get better. They're not. Often we volunteer because we're grateful for those who have helped us find meaning in our lives. We also volunteer because it makes us happy to help others. In our busy world, our lives are so complex that we every day have to make difficult choices about how we're going to use the few hours we have to give to causes and communities, that all of which are important to us. We enjoy making a difference, and gifts of our precious time need to be honored. To give with a grateful and happy heart, it's important to be aware of what we as individuals need and what we receive from our volunteer activities. Some of us here volunteer because we want to learn and grow as we volunteers. Others of us need to volunteer in a way that's relaxing, that's a respite from life's turmoil. Still, others of us recognize that we have a specialized gift that's needed and will make a huge difference. We see all these varied needs and volunteer activities expressed in the time we give to this fellowship, beginning with those who have been here for years or even decades. I hope that those of you who have been here for years, who have spent years slowly and carefully building this fellowship, have a deep sense of happiness as you see this community continue to grow and thrive. Our volunteer activities are the way we share the ministry of this fellowship. Each of us has multiple roles within the life of UUFC. This means that we participate both in the doing of tasks and in the nurturing of others. It's a dual relationship. In giving to each other, we are embodying what it means to be in unity and kinship with one another. Our gifts of time and talent support our fifth principle, the use of the democratic process. Marjorie Moore wrote, "Volunteering is the ultimate experience in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, or maybe more, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in." So how can we as volunteers feel that our work enriches our lives and makes us happy? Perhaps there's some ways that we can help each other experience volunteering with a happy heart as well as a grateful heart. These aspects of community life these are aspects that we need to think about and talk about together. Perhaps a class on the care and feeding of volunteers, although we eat pretty well here. But for this morning, let's just begin with the simplest thing we can do for each other. Let's remember to say thank you to each other. We can't say it often enough. Those baked goodies on Sunday during social time did not bake themselves. And the coffee urns are not animated like Disney characters. The bulletins don't fold themselves, and the weeds don't decide not to grow because we're nice people. Expressing our gratitude reminds us of how many people do things for us without our even asking. It makes us all feel appreciated when those two simple words, thank you, are expressed. There are times when our volunteering warms our hearts, puts joy into our step, and anticipation into our actions. And we also know that there are times when our good deeds may feel tedious. After all, there's so many interesting personalities in politics that can get in the way of our joyful giving. Our spiritual growth is enhanced when we are more intentional about both where we derive pleasure in our volunteering and also acknowledging when we're ready for other jobs. The blowtorch is about to take off. And though we might not say it out loud, we may begin to feel that we're stuck with a volunteer position for the rest of our lives. Any of y'all have felt that before? Yeah. Or we might feel unrecognized and unappreciated. Sadly, this can happen in our volunteering. So it's important to acknowledge when we're ready for new tasks that give us renewed enjoyment. We all need to be sensitive to the varied needs that each of us brings to our giving. I remember someone in another congregation, she was chair of the personnel committee, Alan, for like 6 or 7, 8 years. She really thought she was going to have this for the rest of her life. She finally came to me and said, "This is what I do at work. I do not want to come to church and feel like I'm at work. I want to sing in the choir and do other things." But she needed permission. So she let go of that position to develop new skills and get to know other people in the congregation. This change transformed her experience as a fellowship volunteer. She felt renewed and energized. Sometimes we all need to be mindful that just because someone does something really well at work, it doesn't mean that they want to do that when they volunteer at the fellowship. We also need to be sensitive as individuals in the community to the reality that there's some of our volunteers who might feel lonely or are struggling in their personal lives. They might enjoy the sense of community that happens when they volunteer with others rather than taking on solitary tasks. Other folks have said, "I like to do things for my UU congregation, but I never just get to be part of the community anymore. I feel like I'm always working. People keep asking me to do something in the midst of a conversation that I'm having or a class that I'm taking, or people keep telling me how to do things in a better way or proposing projects, but they never offer to help. Perhaps before we make that suggestion, we might want to think about the other person first and allow some of our hardworking volunteers the space just to participate in fellowship activities without feeling like they're working all the time. And if you have an idea, send an email. And if you think it's a really good idea, volunteer to do it. Another way that we can help our volunteers experience more happiness is to remember that when we share the ministry of our congregation, then no single person's ideas are the only ones that should be heard. And no one owns a project or an activity. This is hard sometimes, and an area of growth for some of us. I'm including myself in that. We hold on to our idea or way of doing things or thinking about things. And what happens is the activity is no longer an experience that's shared or that other people can enjoy with us. Yet another person, or actually several people in different congregations, have said that they want to step down from a committee or project, but there's nobody to step up to do their job. Sometimes the reality is that others don't want to step forward until there's an empty space created for new leadership to emerge. People might think that you really do want to have that job for life. So I think it's important for us to have the practice, and I think this congregation is already doing it, to volunteer for 2 or 3 years at one task and then allow others to volunteer. That might put more enjoyment back in your giving, even if the new person has different ideas about how something should run. It will also help new people coming into UUFC have the opportunity to develop their leadership skills. I'm new enough that I haven't had these kinds of conversations, well, 1 or 2, with very many people. But the reality is that in every congregation, there's a need for more volunteers. And every congregation has people who dedicate their lives to volunteering at their church. But if everyone did a little, then some of the folks we care about in our fellowship wouldn't feel so overworked. It's challenging to volunteer with a happy heart when we're exhausted or feel unappreciated. Because I know that you care deeply about each other, let's commit ourselves to simplifying, streamlining, and always having fun together. And with fear and trembling, I give some of you permission to let go of that volunteer job that you once enjoyed, but really want to let go of so you can explore other activities. Continuing to encourage a regular rotation of leadership nurtures everyone. It is a spiritual practice for all of us to be reflective about how we want to volunteer and to be of service to this community. So call me. Jack's at college now. I'm here for good. Let's talk about where your skills might be needed and new areas you'd like to explore. Think about the activities where you feel nourished as you give to this community. Try something. If it isn't your cup of tea, move on and try something else. There are plenty of aspects of this community and other organizations that will appreciate your thoughtful and caring participation. As our committees and groups become more active in the coming weeks, let's take some time to talk as a community in our committee meetings and other groups about how we can create an environment where everyone can feel nurtured as well as experiencing happiness and gratitude in their volunteer activities. And let's remember to say thank you often and with gusto. When we share and build this congregation, we become blessings in the lives of one another. I invite us to share responsive reading number 728. And this reflects on some of the many ways that we are blessings to each other. Blessed are those who yearn for deepening more than escape, who are not afraid to grow in spirit. Blessed are those who bring their children, who invite their friends to come along, to join in fellowship, service, learning, and growth. Blessed are those who know that the church is often imperfect, yet rather than harbor feelings of anger or disappointment, bring their concerns and needs to the attention of the church leaders. Blessed are those who speak their minds in meetings, who can take and give criticism, who keep alive their sense of humor. Blessed are they indeed.